everyone, welcome back to Procrastinate with Books. In today's new episode, we'll be covering up all the books that I've read in the month of June and doing a full monthly reading wrap video for you guys. Now, I must tell you that predominantly the books that I read mostly fall in the category of fantasy or murder mysteries for this month, but there have been a handful of picks around non-fiction, middle grade, and even spooky horror books, but just a few. Without any further disclaimers and any more lagging, let's quickly jump into the video. Starting off with the middle grade first, The Case of Zombie Ninjas is the second book in the supernatural detective mystery of Dottie Morgan. Now, this follows the aftermath of what things actually happened in book one, and things have been carried on forward after that. So, after the ghost has been chased away, there is now being a memorial garden being constructed, and they are actually revamping this whole thing. But all the money or the financial assistance that's been provided into this is being given by Mr. Sato from the Sato Corporation. Now, he has been so far very helpful, and Dottie is really happy, but she just can't budge the feeling that there is something else behind his true wants of actually getting to assist her in all the financial aspects of the projects undertaken in this society. So she is a little tricky, and gradually she gets to know that he's actually interested in one of the accomplishments that her dad got. He recently went to Japan and got an ancient cup and a sword excavated, and he's really interested to examine it, and that is where his core interest lies. Now, amongst these things, they seem to be appearing another supernatural creature amongst them who is also after that sword and cup and has been somehow attracted to that item, and because of that now they are being chased by it. They just want to get free, and all those adventures and murder mysteries are taking ahead. Next in the category of horror and spooky book, we have Eyes in the Shadow, which is a very spooky book, let me tell you. It also has a downline romance angle that's actually carrying the whole story forward from the plot perspective. The story here is about our protagonist who is trying to move forward in her life after the death of her last partner long time ago, but now that she thinks that okay, maybe I'm now finally ready to date again and move forward, no sooner has she made those plans and started executing them, peculiar things start to happen around us, and that's where she gets to know that her past is not really in her past, it's also intermingled in her present in form of shadows, and that person in its ghostly soul form is making all those unwanted events occur around her, and she's really scared to her bones, and things are absolutely colliding between the past and the present, and there is a little bit of trauma amongst the whole relationship and getting over it, and how sometimes even after death you just can't get over someone. So those aspects are really portrayed well, and the story in fact reminded me of the movie Raz. If you have seen it, especially the first part, I think the whole haunted woods and those misty elements and fog in the night time, it totally reminds me of it. Another spooky book that I read was Do As Godmother Says. Now, this is not exactly a ghost kind of a spooky book, but a thrilling kind of a spooky book, if you understand what I'm saying. The storyline here is divided into dual timelines. So, in the present timeline, the painting that's there in the book cover is in possession of a young person, and she got it from her grandmother recently, and ever since she has actually got the painting, weird things have started to happen around her. She feels that someone is following her or the painting is looking at her. There's very weird aspect that the painting might be haunted that has been developed throughout the book in the intermingling side, but it's not truly haunted but sort of haunted, and things are being hinted but not really given in 100% clear giveaway. On the second timeline story, it actually showcased the story of the painter who actually painted that painting, and we are discussing her life, how she came into the presence of Godmother and what things happened. There are slight touches of magical realism into it as well, but very slight from the second timeline perspective. And when these two collide and the whole mystery around is being solved, I think that's where it actually raises a lot of fears, goosebumps, and thrilling, chilling moments as well. We have Conversations with Birds, which is a non-fiction book that I picked up to read for this month, and oh my god, I listened to this book in an audiobook format, and the whole narration felt like a meditative experience to me. The narrator's voice is so calm, and the whole topic is approached with such a gentleness that you just can't let it heal you. I think this book is mainly for the people who would love to live in the outskirts of the city in a peaceful natural breeze surrounded by nature's life and the natural wildlife around it, not the zoo kind of a thing, but just natural beauty. I think that is the perfect audience for this book because they would probably associate more with the topics discussed here at hand. It actually discusses the author's approach to viewing birds, and there was this one line that she mentioned in the book that once you start bird watching, I think the more you notice, the more you see. Because otherwise, we would be sitting over here in our homes, and if it's a bird chirping outside, we might not even pay attention to it, which kind of bird it is. But once you really start to notice things and you really start doing the bird watching habits, I think that inculcates a different feeling altogether, and that is basically woven into her lifestyle and into the stories that she narrates one after the other as she goes through her life. It's more like a combination of memoir with birds and the role that birds played in her life, and it is a very weird topic to discuss, but for someone like me, it was a really interesting pick. I really loved listening to the audiobook, and I'm pretty much sure as soon as I can get my hands on a physical copy, I will definitely get this book. We move on to the next category of murder mysteries, within which the first book that I read was The Nest of Vipers. Now, this is the third book in the Ramu murder mystery series, following Kaveri as a main protagonist. And Kaveri is basically one of my favorite characters, especially when it comes to Indian murder mysteries. I think she's really well developed. She has few flaws, a lot of different variations as well as skill sets, and a lot of deliberation to do what she really wants in her life, and nobody can put her across that path. Anyways, coming to the story of the book in here, this one follows the afterline of book 2, and this time around Prince Wales is coming to India for a regular visit, but while the whole city is bustling with doing all the preparations for everything to go right as he comes across in the city, Kaveri is absolutely excited for the new circus that is going to happen in town next week. And while she's very excited to watch it, things obviously don't end up as they were supposed to go. And while they're actually watching the circus, someone ends up dead. And she obviously cannot resist the temptation to solve this case yet again, even though people all around her, even her husband this time, is telling her that the people involved in association with this whole event are really high profile and you might want to skip this one for your own sanity, but she refuses to do so and she solves the murder. That's where the story is. Next up, we have a matrimonial murder, which is situated around the Mumbaiker's life, and there is this marriage bureau in there that is usually used for making arranged marriages take place, and you look out for rishtas to be in the typical Indian term, and you find the most relevant people based on the criteria that you set in, and they are the best matchmakers in town, or so they call themselves. Until one day, one of the assistant working there turns up dead, and now people are contemplating whether the actual victim was supposed to be her or the head of that anarchy, her boss Sarla, and things are being investigated further. Now, though this is a very baseline murder mystery plot, it is topped up with so much of humor and fun that you just can't stop laughing for so many instances across the book. I found the book really funny, hilarious at some instances, full of humor, and of course the murder mystery line was there. But for me, the if it had to be the personal pick, I think I enjoyed the funniness of the Guju community very much more than everything else that was going on around in the book. That Night in the Library was supposed to be a books about books into the murder mystery category. Sadly, the only plotline of books about books here was that the whole story almost took place inside a library. But besides that, I don't think books played a lot of role. Maybe some role, but not really a 100% book saw about books kind of a story. Anyways, the storyline here is about seven Greek students who have decided to do some Greek ritual in the library basement when everybody goes off and wouldn't be coming around until next day. They are going to make a sacrifice in there, and after that they will have what they really wish to attain for. But for that, the real sacrifice needs to be made. Now, what kind of sacrifice are they planning? They were definitely planning to do something else. There's a whole lot of fasting and Persephone and the pomegranate seeds sort of elements that are infused in here, and there are cross references with that story as well. So you might want to be well versed with her story, otherwise you just wouldn't get the point of this story in general. But otherwise, someone turns up dead once they are doing the ritual, and just after that, once people start accusing each other who is the real culprit, other dead bodies start turning up. So another one dies, another one dies back to back after that, and everyone who is left is absolutely scared shit. And they just want to know who the real culprit is and get out of that basement. But because it's in a basement, there's no network and nobody else would probably be coming around until next day morning. And how they survive the night is really the question that the book is about to answer. Botanist Guide to Society and Secrets is the third book in this whole mystery series following the same protagonist. Now, this time around, the protagonist's ex's brother is being a suspect of a murder that was committed long time ago, and he is now asking her to actually solve the mystery so that his brother, who he thinks is wrongfully convicted, might be free of all sorts of charges and would be away from the suspect list as much as possible, because they do have some sort of a thing that they are hiding and they do not want that actual thing to come into the limelight. So that's where the plot is. But no sooner our protagonist delves herself into the mystery and gets into the research lab and tries to investigate things, there is a Russian person who is also investigating things on the sideline is approaching them. There's another person who is acting like he's on behalf of a government agency and he might be a secret agent, and a lot of involvement of several other characters really complicates the whole plot. But I think it's for the best. Now, the best part about this book was the subtlety of it and the way it actually explained lingos to you, because this whole thing is happening in the botanist universe, talking about fungi, plants, bacteria, viruses, and all sorts of development, inclusions, and God knows what. And everything will make sense while you're actually reading it, even if you're not really from a bio background, because I wasn't, and I still understood the story pretty well. There wasn't a turn off point for me that I'm not really able to understand the lingos of the book. It was explained in a very subtle and beautiful way that you wouldn't really feel childlike that these things are being explained to you, but then you would still get it even being a novice like me. So I think that was my favorite part. Then of course the murder mystery and the high stake elements of life under threatening positions was of course another angle that I really enjoyed. I think this is one of the good murder mysteries that you would definitely want, both for its plotline and for the beautiful cover as well. Now, Haven would probably act as a bridge between the fantasy section, which is next to be followed, and the murder mystery section, because it had sort of mysterious element to it, sort of spooky vibe and haunted mansion, but not exactly ghosted. But there was still a sort of a vibe. The story here is about this not so perfect family who are really struggling in their own places, and they finally decide to go on a vacation into a very special mansion on the outskirts into a different city. And once they reach there, they start and live their life to the fullest, though the children are not really 100% up for it. The mom really wanted the family to be there, and the father was just trying to be supportive, and that's the maximum he's trying to do in his relationship. Besides that, they don't really have any sort of involvement. So everyone is just trying to put up one step ahead beyond their gradual responsibilities that they were trying to portray up until now. And while they are trying to do that, somehow it feels that evil thoughts start penetrating their brain. They start acting pretty angsty, especially the two siblings. I think the sibling war dynamics that are shown amongst them is escalated to such a high level. I don't really understand how much of it was really influenced by the house and its vibes, and how much of it was really natural. And that's where the whole plotline is going on, and they are later trying to just survive and get out of this whole arena alive. But beyond that, I think the whole story did not have any additional layer or sense. And I was sort of disappointed by the way the story ended, because I was expecting something more to happen, but it gradually declined from there, and that's why it was a bit of an average read. I'm not really sure if I should be recommending this or not. Now let's talk about Rakesfall. Well, on a second opinion, let's not talk about this book, because the blurb of the story that's mentioned in the background, the story inside matches nothing with it. For me, it made no sense. I don't know why I even picked it up, besides the obvious luring element. I think it's a very, very adult book for even me to read. And the most disappointing fact about this book, for me particularly, why I absolutely disliked it, was even the normal scenes that was supposed to be clean or could be easily understood, like someone walking out of the woods, okay? And why do you really have to make that dirty? And I just did not like it. I have no words how disappointed I am with this book. I just wouldn't recommend this to anyone. Then another fantasy book that we have is Tinderbox, which is not as disappointing as Rakesfall, but it was still pretty average if I talk about the storyline. The concept of the story here was that a protagonist was returning to her homeland, or the place where she grew up, and she finds that the witch who actually raised her is now dead, and her most prized possession, the box, which had all the magical abilities and capabilities, is actually being stolen. And the person who has stolen has now claimed himself to be the king of this place and is now ruling. And now she plans to take vengeance by working under his nose and actually killing him. And that's the whole plot. But besides the plot, the whole story execution, the character development, I think none of it was really done to the effectiveness of the plot. I think the plot was really interesting and strong, but the book had so much more potential for it to be executed in several other ways. I find if the characters were developed in a slightly other angle, I think they would have attracted much more audience, or would be co-relatable to several other people as well. I think there wasn't that bridge that really connected me to the story on a granular level, and that is why I probably did not enjoy it as much as other books. We had Cloak of the Vampire, and this one, thankfully, I did enjoy. Otherwise, the whole fantasy reading experiment for this particular month would be a devastating one. Anyway, talking about the story here, our protagonist is Eileen Henderson. I really associated with that character, and that's why I probably remember her name as well. So she's really trying to live a low stake life and does not want to be in the limelight anywhere possible, because she obviously has something in her past that she wants to stay hidden, and because of that she prefers a low profile. Now one day after a fight, she's just chasing her best friend, and the next thing that she probably knows that is she's condemned to eternal damnation. That is, someone has converted her into a vampire and she's now transformed. And now in the worlds of vampires, there are these whole leagues, just like the witches have their own covens. The vampires have their leagues, and you should either be part of a particular league, or you will be dressed aside as an outcast, and that's not really the best way to survive in this world. So you really want to be a part of that league. But before that league, you actually have to prepare yourself through training and other stuff that they asked you to do. And at the end of your training period, there is an auction that happens, and on each vampire skill set, their auctioneers would probably bid upon certain vampires and get them into their leagues. And if you're not selected by anybody, I think that would be the most terrible fate that could probably befallen you. And that's where our protagonist is. She is trying to fit in with all those dramas and everything that she's trying to do. And on the other hand, she comes to know who really bit her that day, and because of whom she is now a vampire, and she just cannot have a low profile life anymore, and she really wants to avenge that. And while she is trying to take a revenge from him, there is also this brewing chemistry between them, which is sort of hinting like enemies to lovers sort of a concept. But there is so much more to explore, because just after the auction, I think the book one ends, and there's this whole series where the new world of mortal gods and everything is about to be opened up to us. So there is so much more potential, but even what was delivered to us on the platter, like a prequel to the main story, was really devouring. The Saint is actually a prequel to Fable and Namesake, which is a duology based in the world of Narrows and the sea explosions and everything. And this is following a particular protagonist called Saint and his battle protagonist, who is a female. And there's this beautiful chemistry that's growing between them. Now, Saint has been forever chasing his dream, the dream of his father to get his own ship and start his own trade in the Narrows. And now that finally the dream is about to come together with the crew in hand, the trade licenses in hand, and everything going smoothly forward, something obviously interrupts it, and that's none other than this girl. And while the chemistry between them is brewing really hot, everything around is turning really cold. There are new people who are actually chasing her because she's a gem sage, and if you're aware about the whole world build up, gem sage are people who can really listen to the gemstones actual frequency and identify the real one from fake ones, and they are really crafty people. But these peoples are usually traded off to a different island for slavery, just for a higher cost, so that they can actually get the right gemstones from earth over there. But that's the whole sideline story. Anyways, the main story in here felt like a prequel. There are so many character names that, because it had been a long time since I read the first two books, felt a little novel to me, but gradually things fit into the picture. And I was at first feeling that the whole story is repeating from Fable, but with two different other characters, because this was also a girl who was rescued from water, and even in Fable, you have a rescue operation that triggers the whole crew on the ship, and things move forward from there. But, anyways, things fit into the picture, but I think I still have some unanswered questions left related to Saint's character in general. Let's see if we have another book coming up that actually explains and answers those as well. The Curse of the Saints is the second book in the duology, where the first book, Curse of Saints, was ended at a very cliffhanger sort of a note. In this part, now that Aya has understood and discovered her hidden capabilities, that she actually was trying to save Towa, and in that instance, she actually discovered that she in herself has that light and power to actually draw energy and change it into different formats for a simpler reasoning. And from there, she now flees for her life, but she knows she might end up going back to the queen and working with her on the goals that she has designed for her, for the ultimate goal, which is that Aya is the true savior of the realm. And with the upcoming war that's about to happen between the dark magic, they really have to protect their kingdom. And for that very reason, she is supposed to be their savior, the person who survives till the end and saves the realm. But she's not really so sure about her own capabilities, and that is being discussed at length over here. There's obviously brewing that just before war mystery that happens, those preparations and enigmas and plotting schemes, all those things are happening in the background. And I think it was a really interesting book to read. If you haven't already, I would suggest you wait out a bit longer and hold your horses, because the book 3 is yet to come out. And since this book has a habit of ending on sort of cliffhangers and leaving you rooting for the rest of the story, I think it's better off to binge read the whole series, because there will be 3 books in this series so far, as of what I know. And it's better to read them together rather than read one book, wait for the next, read second, wait for the next. It's just better that way. Now moving on to the final book that I read was Belladonna in fantasy category. Now a lot of people have mixed opinions on this book, I, for most part, actually enjoyed reading it, and I'm still going to read The Foxglove, which is the next book in this series as well. The good part about the series is the book one is complete in itself, but if you still want to indulge yourself in this whole world that's been created, you can also read the second book. So it's like a choice that a reader has, and you are not forced to read the next part just because you did not have a closure in book one. Anyways, talking about the concept of the book, the concept of belladonna or the nightshade berries are used to actually, create a whole passage or a world between the two existing worlds, the world of the dead and the world of the living. And this girl who has the special capabilities that if she engulfs those berries in her mouth for some time, she is in a transcendent state in between them. So she's not entirely dead, she's not entirely alive. And amidst that, she can actually see death, talk to him, and have a full blown conversation and everything else. And over the time, as you navigate into the story, there is this whole chemistry brewing up between her and death, which is a very novel thing to see for the most part. I think there were a lot of novel elements, which is what lured me into the story, and they were executed well too, despite a few drop off moments. For say, there was a base plot line of a murder mystery that was going on, but while the book was narrating its different aspects, I think for several moments even the characters forgot that there is a murder to be solved, and they were like, one particular instance I would like to highlight, I hope it's not a spoiler, that the sister is dying over there in the house and they went to the apothecary to get the right chemicals or right medicine for her, okay? And they are trying to hurry back, but someone invites them for the tea. So they, being their polite self, and so that they don't come off as rude, they now, in fact, go to the tea, have a little bit chit chat, and act calm on the outside, whereas they are fretting on the inside about her sister, and then run away back to her sister and give her the medicine. And it was the most absurd thing that I read in this book, and that was probably one of the turn of moments. But otherwise, story was interesting to say the very least. And with that, we have made it to the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching all the books that I have read this month. I think if I had to pick my top three, it would be Conversations with Birds, Do What Godmother Says, and The Curse of Sins. I think these three would be my top three books. The disappointing one you already know. Let me know in the comments down below which of these books have you planned to read in the coming months, or do you have any other plans that you want to execute this weekend? Let me know in the comments, and I'll catch up with you in my next video. Until then, keep your coffee strong and your TBS long. Goodbye.